I was 26 the year it happened, too old to feel lost, too young to know any better. Life had already been teaching me the kind of lessons you don't forget, how bills pile up faster than dreams, how love slips away when the rent is late too many times, and how loneliness can make even the ugliest places feel like home. My name is Ethan Morales, and in 2017 I lived in a faded town called Ashford, tucked somewhere between two interstates no one bothered to remember. Ashford had three things: a boarded-up movie theater, a Walmart that never closed, and the Marathon Gas and Mart on Route 12, where I worked night shifts. It wasn't supposed to be forever, just a way to get by after dropping out of my teaching program. I'd burned through loans, quit classes, and broken my mom's heart in the same year. She stopped asking me when I was going back and started asking if I was eating enough. I usually lied. The gas station was a cage of buzzing lights and humming refrigerators. The pay was awful, the customers worse, but it kept a roof over my head in a small one-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a heater that rattled like a bad lung. The only good part of the job was Maya Patel. She worked the evening shifts before me. Maya was 24, studying nursing, with a laugh that made the store feel less like a tomb. Some nights we overlapped an hour, enough time for her to tease me about my terrible instant coffee habit, or for me to pretend I wasn't staring at her smile too long. "You're gonna rot your stomach with that stuff," she said once, scrunching her nose at the steaming cup in my hand. "Better than falling asleep behind the counter," I shot back. She smirked. "Maybe you'd sleep better if you didn't live on Doritos and caffeine." That was Maya, half concern, half sarcasm, always wrapped in kindness. She had a boyfriend back in Chicago, a detail she dropped early, maybe to save me from myself. But I couldn't help it. The way she looked at people, like she actually saw them, it made my chest ache. I told myself we were just friends. Told myself I liked the quiet anyway. But truth is, I held on to those little moments like a drowning man grips driftwood. November 10th, 2017. The night it began felt ordinary. Too ordinary. That's what makes it stick. The storm rolled in around midnight, fat drops of rain hammering the awning, wind pressing against the glass doors. By the time Maya's shift ended at 11:45, the parking lot was a shimmering black mirror. She lingered longer than usual, standing near the door with her jacket half zipped. "You sure you'll be okay in this?" she asked. I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Storms and I are old friends." Her eyes flicked to mine. "Ethan," she said softly, like she wanted to add something, but thought better of it. Then she left, dashing through the rain to her car, taillights vanishing into the night. And just like that, the silence swallowed me whole. I stocked shelves, mopped the sticky tiles, wiped fingerprints from the coffee machine. By 2 a.m., the store was empty, just the hum of coolers and the occasional groan of thunder. I just settled behind the counter with an old paperback when I noticed him. A man stood under pump 4, rain drenching his hood and jacket. At first, I thought he was just another stranded driver. But he wasn't pumping gas. He wasn't moving at all. He just stood there, head tilted slightly toward the store watching. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I shifted uneasily. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was tweaking. God knows Ashford had its share. Still, something about his stillness made my skin crawl. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate thuds against the glass door, heavy enough to rattle the frame. I froze, heart kicking against my ribs. The man pressed his hand against the glass. Blood trickled down his knuckles, diluted by the rain. Company policy was clear: no letting anyone in after hours. But the storm howled, and guilt twisted inside me. Against my better judgment, I cracked the door. "Rough night?" I asked, voice thinner than I liked. He stepped in without answering. Water pooled beneath him. He didn't head for the coffee machine, didn't ask for help. He just started pacing in wide circles, boots squeaking against the tile. "Hey," I tried again. "You need me to call someone? You're bleeding." He stopped, lifted his head. His eyes were blank, glassy, unfocused, like no one was home. Then he whispered, "Don't use the phone. Whatever you do, don't call anyone." My throat went dry. "Sorry, what?" But he'd already turned away, muttering fragments under his breath, words drowned by thunder. Finally, sharp and clear, I caught two. They're coming. That night didn't end when he walked back into the storm. It didn't end when the cops shrugged and said maybe I imagined it. Because he came back. Every few nights, I'd see him, sometimes across the street, sometimes by the dump, sometimes standing perfectly still under the flickering streetlight, always watching. And then the phone calls started, just breathing at first, then whispers, the same word over and over. Don't. The spiral. I stopped sleeping, carried a bat behind the counter, started driving Maya halfway home after her shifts, pretending it was just because of the storm. "You're not yourself," she said once, watching me grip the steering wheel too tight. "Just tired," I lied. She reached across the seat, brushed my arm gently. "You know you can tell me if something's wrong, right?" God, I wanted to tell her, wanted to pour it all out. But how do you explain fear that no one else believes in? Instead, I forced a smile. "I'll be fine." But I wasn't. Every shadow stretched too long. Every ring of the phone made me jump. The gas station became less a workplace and more a prison. And the man, always there, until the night I made the mistake. The phone rang at 3:07 a.m. I picked it up, hand shaking. Static hissed, then his voice. "Don't!" Something in me snapped. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the receiver. Silence. Then, laughter. Low, slow, savoring. When I looked up, he was standing right outside the glass, hood dripping, eyes locked on mine. I swear he smiled. December 2nd, 2017. That was my last shift. I quit without notice, packed everything into my rust-eaten Honda, and drove away from Ashford. Told myself I'd never look back. But leaving didn't end it, because sometimes, even now in a new city, a new life, I'll catch a glimpse of him, across a parking lot, at the edge of a crowd, always in the rain. And every time the phone rings late at night, I hesitate before answering, because I still hear that whisper in the back of my mind. Don't. I never thought love and fear could exist in the same night. In 2018, I was 25, restless and always looking for something to break the monotony of my small-town life. I'd been dating Emily for about a year, and she was the kind of woman who made everything feel less heavy. She had this quiet way of laughing, like she didn't want the world to know, but wanted me to. That summer, we decided to take a road trip up the Oregon coast. No plans, no schedule, just her, me, and my beat-up Honda Civic that rattled if you drove over 70. We wanted adventure, and for a week we had it. Hikes through dripping green forests, cheap diners with greasy pancakes, and nights where we slept in motels that smelled like cigarette smoke but felt like freedom. For a while, it was like we had stepped out of real life, but long drives take their toll. On our last night, August 11th, we pushed further than we should have. Emily suggested stopping, but my pride got in the way. "You're fading," she said, her hand resting gently on my arm as I drove through the dark stretch of Highway 6. "I'm fine," I muttered, tightening my grip on the wheel. "You've been saying that for 2 hours." I forced a grin. "We're almost home. Just a couple more hours." She sighed, shaking her head, but let it go. That was Emily. She never liked to argue long. Still, I could feel the tension in her silence. When the glow of a gas station sign appeared through the mist, I slowed. "We'll stop here real quick. Gas, water, and we'll be back on the road." The place looked like it had been forgotten by time. A single flickering fluorescent light buzzed over the pumps. A hand-painted sign read, "Harper's Fuel Stop, family-owned since 1972. An old sedan sat abandoned near the side of the lot. The night was heavy with fog, the kind that swallowed sound. Emily's hand tightened on mine. "This place feels wrong." "It's just old," I said, trying to sound casual. 2 minutes and we're gone." I stepped out into the damp air, the smell of wet asphalt clinging to my nose. Emily slipped inside the store to grab drinks while I handled the pump. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach knot. Deep scratches carved along the driver's side door of our car. Jagged, deliberate. I froze, staring. We hadn't driven through anything that could do this. These weren't branches. They looked like claw marks. or worse, like someone had dragged a knife. Before I could call out for Emily, she came out of the store pale, her hands trembling around two water bottles. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "We need to leave. Now." "What happened?" I asked, my throat dry. "There's blood. On the counter inside. And nobody's there." My heart thudded so hard I thought my chest might split. I opened my mouth to answer, but a loud, deliberate thud echoed from behind the building. Heavy, like a boot splashing in water. Emily's eyes widened. "Someone's back there." I locked eyes with her. "Get in the car." We scrambled inside. My hands shook as I turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then went silent. "Come on," I hissed, trying again. Nothing. Emily's breath fogged the window as she whispered, "Alex, look." Through the mist, beneath the flickering light, a figure stood between the pumps. Tall, motionless, a hood pulled low, hiding its face, just watching. My stomach dropped. Emily spotted the payphone at the edge of the lot. She grabbed coins from the console. "I'll call the sheriff." Wait." But she was already out the door, rain misting her hair as she sprinted toward the booth. I locked the doors, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the figure. It hadn't moved, but the longer I stared, the less human it seemed. Emily slammed coins into the phone. She lifted the receiver, her face twisting. "It's dead," she shouted, her voice sharp with panic. "The line's cut." Before I could react, headlights blazed behind me. The old sedan at the side of the lot roared to life. Its engine growled like it had been waiting. Slowly, deliberately, it rolled forward, blocking the only exit. "Alex!" Emily screamed, racing back to the car. She yanked the door open, stumbling inside. "Go, go, go!" The Civic finally roared awake as I twisted the key again, adrenaline surging through my veins. Tires screeched as I slammed the pedal, fishtailing toward the exit. The sedan lunged forward, headlights burning holes into my skull. We swerved past by inches, our side mirrors snapping off as it grazed the bumper. I shot onto the highway, the car shaking, Emily clutching my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. For 20 miles, I didn't breathe. The sedan didn't follow, but the silence it left behind felt worse than pursuit. When a neon sign appeared ahead, a 24-hour diner, I pulled in, the car shuddering to a stop like it had given everything it had. Inside, the diner glowed with cheap lights and smelled of burnt coffee. A waitress greeted us like no. Nothing was wrong. The normalcy felt surreal. Emily gripped my hand. "We have to call the sheriff." Minutes later, we were on the phone with dispatch, spilling everything. The scratches, the blood, the figure, the car. Deputies said they'd check it out. When they called back, their voices were confused. "Sir, there's nothing here. No blood, no abandoned car. Clerk says he's been on shift all night." I stared at the receiver, my skin crawling. Emily whispered, "They don't believe us." We stayed at that diner until dawn, too shaken to leave. Every time headlights swept past the windows, Emily flinched. Every time the door creaked open, my pulse spiked. Morning brought sunlight, birdsong, and the illusion of safety. But when I stepped outside, the scratches on my car door were still there. Ugly, unexplainable. Proof. The deputy looked at them, then shrugged. Storm debris. Happens all the time. But I knew better, and so did Emily. We never figured out what happened at Harper's fuel stop. Whether it was some predator waiting or something less human, I can't say. All I know is we barely escaped. To this day, I avoid long night drives. Emily still wakes up sometimes, shaking from dreams of footsteps in the fog. We don't talk about it much, but when we do, her eyes go distant, like she's standing back in that lot, staring at a figure that shouldn't have been there. And every time I see an old payphone in a movie, my chest tightens, remembering the sound of her voice shouting in the rain, "The line's dead!" Because some places aren't meant for stopping, and some shadows aren't meant to be seen. I never thought love and fear would find me in the same place, a lonely gas station on the edge of town. My name is Daniel Reed, I'm 32, and for most of my adult life, I've been trying to hold myself together with duct tape and coffee. 2 years ago, my wife Elena walked out. We were high school sweethearts, the kind of couple people thought would last forever, but forever turned brittle after too many late nights, missed anniversaries, and the weight of bills we couldn't pay. She told me one morning, without tears, without yelling, just quiet finality, "Danny, I can't keep doing this. You're here, but you're not with me." She left for Portland with someone else, a guy she met at work. Since then, my world shrank to two anchors. My daughter Chloe, who's 9, and my son Mason, who just turned 6. They live mostly with their mom, and I get weekends if I can swing it. I live for those weekends. The way Mason still grabs my hand when we cross the street, the way Chloe asked me to braid her hair, though I'm clumsy with it. They don't know how much I replay those moments when I'm alone. By day, I clean offices, cubicles that smell like dust and leftover Chinese takeout, break rooms with coffee stains older than me. It doesn't pay much, and child support bites hard. So when a buddy told me that Summit Fuel, a gas station out by the old highway, was hiring for night shifts, I didn't hesitate. Money is money. The place was different. Not modern, not polished. Summit Fuel looked like it belonged in the late 70s, with its peeling brick walls, flickering neon sign, and a parking lot big enough to feel like a black ocean at 3 a.m. The inside had a register, shelves stocked with dusty snacks, a coffee station no one touched, and humming coolers that made the silence even louder. Upstairs had once been offices, but they'd been locked for years. At least that's what my coworker Carl told me. Carl was in his late 50s, thin as a wire, always with a cigarette dangling from his lips. He'd worked there for decades, and when we swapped shifts, he usually muttered something like, "Don't fall asleep." That's when you hear it. I laughed it off. At first, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before the fear, before the night that still keeps me awake, there was her. Her name was Maya Torres. I met her on my 3rd week at Summit Fuel. It was close to midnight when she came in, shaking the rain from her jacket. She had the kind of presence that filled the room quietly. Dark hair falling loose around her shoulders, tired eyes that still managed warmth. She bought coffee, black, and a pack of gum. "You're new," she said, her voice carrying that soft lilt people from small towns never lose. "Yeah," I admitted, still figuring out if this place is creepy or just boring. She smiled, faint but real. "Maybe both." That first night, we only exchanged small talk, but she started coming by more often. Sometimes just for coffee, sometimes just to sit at one of the stools near the window, scrolling her phone. I learned she was 29, worked as a nurse at the county hospital, and lived with her grandmother. We talked about everything from music to childhood regrets, the way lonely people do when they stumble into each other's orbit. One night, she caught me staring too long at eye, the rain streaking down the glass. "What's going on in that head of yours?" she asked. I shrugged. "Just thinking how quiet this place gets, like it's waiting for something." Her smile faded. "Yeah, it's always been like that here." The noises started small, typing sounds, faint, like someone pounding on an old keyboard above me. Then footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. At first I told myself it was pipes or animals nesting, but the third time it was a voice, a girl's voice, humming a lullaby. I froze with a mop in my hand, heart thundering. It was soft, gentle, the kind of tune you'd sing to a child before bed. I thought of Chloe instantly. My throat tightened. The next morning I asked Carl, "You ever hear anything weird upstairs?" For the first time he looked at me dead on. His eyes were sharp, the joking gone. "Don't go up there," he said flatly. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Maya noticed the change in me. "You look like hell," she said one night, sipping her coffee. I tried to joke, but my hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. She tilted her head. "Talk to me, Danny." So I told her. Not everything, just that I was hearing things. That the upstairs didn't feel empty. I expected her to laugh. She didn't. Her eyes darkened instead. "When I was a kid," she said quietly, "my uncle worked here. He used to tell us stories about people who never left. Not ghosts exactly, just echoes. All the exhaustion, the work, the regret, it stains a place, keeps playing." Her words unsettled me more than comforted. Then came the storm. It was February, rain lashing so hard it blurred the world outside. By midnight, the station was empty, the parking lot a sheet of black water. Inside, the noises grew louder. Typing, footsteps, conversations muffled like a meeting happening above me. And under it all, the lullaby. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of being afraid. But I grabbed the old iron key from the wall, the one labeled storage, and climbed the narrow stairs. The air was foul, thick with mildew and something sharper, metallic. The office floor stretched before me like a graveyard. Broken chairs, cracked monitors, papers scattered everywhere. But in the dust, footprints, fresh ones. Then I saw him, a tall man in a dark suit, sharp lines like something from another decade. His shoes polished, impossibly clean. His face pale, unreadable. He didn't look at me. He walked to a desk, placed his hand on it, whispered something I couldn't hear, then pressed a button on the far wall. An elevator button. There was no elevator, yet it glowed. And then he vanished. I ran, nearly tripped down the stairs, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My chest heaved, my hands shaking so hard I spilled the coffee I grabbed just to stay grounded. When Carl came at dawn, I confronted him again. "What the hell is upstairs?" He sighed, looking older than ever. "Some places hold on, kid. They remember what people leave behind. And this place, too many years, too many lives eaten up by work. That's what you heard." It wasn't enough, but it was all he gave me. The weeks after blurred. I traded shifts so I wasn't alone. But the noises didn't stop. Typing, pacing, the phones ringing, the lullaby always returning. Sometimes I swore it was my daughter's voice. That's when it broke me. Maya became my anchor. We'd sit together during the quiet hours, her hands sometimes brushing mine across the counter. Once she stayed until sunrise, listening without judgment as I confessed everything. The divorce, the kids, the fear of becoming nothing but an echo myself. "You're not an echo, Danny," she said softly. "Not if you keep choosing to live." It's been years since I left Summit Fuel. I quit before it hollowed me out. Found steadier work, closer to my kids. Maya and I, well, we're still figuring each other out. But she's the reason I believe in second chances. And yet sometimes when storms roll in and the wind rattles the windows, I swear I hear it again. The typing, the footsteps, the lullaby. I don't think Summit Fuel was haunted by ghosts. I think it was haunted by us, by people who gave too much of themselves to work, to regret, to responsibilities that chewed away their souls. And I wonder when my kids are grown, when I'm gone, if they'll still hear me in the quiet, typing, pacing, humming them to sleep. Because not all hauntings wear sheets or chains. Some are just the echoes of a life stretched too thin. I never thought loneliness could drive a person to do reckless things. But looking back, maybe that's exactly what happened to me. At 30, I wasn't where I thought I'd be. 10 years earlier, fresh out of college, I pictured myself married, maybe raising kids in some cozy suburb, working in a field that inspired me. Instead, I was stuck in Albany, New York, working remote tech support that barely covered bills. My one-bedroom apartment was a shoebox with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who fought through paper-thin walls. Most nights, I ate cold leftovers in front of my laptop, scrolling through dating apps as if love was just one more thing that could be downloaded. My parents called every Sunday, asking when I'd bring someone home. I always laughed it off, but the truth was, I was tired of being alone. That's how I met her. Her name was Maya Torres. She had a smile that didn't look staged, brown eyes that seemed to laugh even through a phone screen. We started with casual banter on Hinge, but within weeks, she was the last person I texted before sleeping and the first I checked in the morning. We swapped Spotify playlists, sent late-night voice notes, traded silly memes. For the first time in years, I felt the spark of possibility. After 2 months of this digital closeness, she suggested we finally meet. "Why not somewhere halfway?" she said on a call one night. "I'm in Philadelphia, you're in Albany. Maybe Scranton? It's not romantic, but at least it's neutral ground." I agreed, nerves tangled with excitement. We planned dinner at a low-key Italian place just outside town. The date. When I first saw her in person, standing under the restaurant's yellow awning, I thought, God, she looks even better than her pictures. She waved when she spotted me, tugging her jacket tighter against the March wind. Alex, she called out. That's me, I said, smiling too wide. Her laugh was soft. Good, I was worried I'd end up waving at the wrong guy. The first 20 minutes were fine. We ordered wine, shared breadsticks, joked about the playlist they had on loop. But soon conversation grew thin. The effortless flow we had over text dissolved into awkward silences. She kept glancing at her phone, fingers flying across the screen when she thought I wasn't looking. By the time dessert came, we both knew it wasn't working. I'm sorry, she said gently as we walked to the parking lot. You're great, Alex, really. But I don't think this is it. I forced a smile. Yeah, I get it. We hugged briefly, more like business partners sealing a deal. And that was that. She drove east. I climbed into my old Honda Civic and pointed north, stomach hollow. The drive. The highway stretched endless and empty under a moonless sky. I blasted music to drown out the disappointment. By the time the clock blinked 12:47 a.m., I was still hours from home. That's when the fuel light blinked on. Perfect, I muttered, slapping the wheel. The next sign read, Exit 143, gas, food, lodging. I veered off, following the ramp into what looked like nowhere. A single gas station sat under buzzing fluorescent lights. The lot was mostly empty, save for a semi idling by the diesel pumps. The sign read, Riverside Fuel in half-dead neon. The girl, I swiped my card and started filling my tank. The night air smelled of wet pavement. That's when I saw her. At first I thought she was a drunk college kid wandering from some party. A girl, barefoot, clothes torn, hair sticking to her face, stumbled from the edge of the lot. Her arms were scraped, her lips trembling. Then her eyes locked onto mine, wide, terrified. She ran. Before I could move, she collided with me, gripping my sleeve. Please, she gasped, voice shredded. They're coming. Don't let them take me back. Please. My throat tightened. What? What happened? Are you hurt? She shook her head violently, eyes darting toward the tree line. No time. Please, just drive. I looked around. The clerk inside the station was hunched over his phone, oblivious. The semi's engine growled low. No one else. Against every rational thought, I unlocked my passenger door. She dove inside, curling into a ball on the seat. The SUV, I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the cops. Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising force. No, not yet. If you do, they'll know. Just drive. Please. My gut screamed this was insane, but her desperation, it was real. I turned the key. As I rolled toward the exit, headlights flared in my rear view. A black SUV glided into the lot, windows tinted. 3 men stepped out. Even from a distance, I could see the way they scanned the station. Predatory, focused. One carried a baseball bat, tapping it against his palm. The girl ducked low. Her whisper was broken glass. That's them. Panic. My pulse hammered. If I merged onto the highway, they'd see us. If I stayed, we were sitting ducks. I swerved, circling behind the Saini. Station, and parked. Heart racing, I sprinted inside. Hey, I hissed at the clerk, a tired man in his 20s. Call the cops. Now there's a girl out there. She's hurt. 3 guys are after her. He blinked, confused, then slowly reached for the phone. Through the glass, I saw the men talking to the trucker, who pointed vaguely toward the lot. Then, before I could stop her, the girl bolted from my car. She sprinted barefoot toward the woods, hair wild in the fluorescent glow. The men shouted and charged after her. Branches cracked as they vanished into the darkness. The woods. Come on, I yelled at the clerk. He was fumbling the receiver, hands shaking. I ran after them. The forest swallowed sound. Wet leaves slipped under my shoes. My flashlight app barely pierced the dark. Hey, I shouted, leave her alone. Somewhere ahead, branches snapped. I glimpsed a pale figure darting between trees. The girl, Or maybe just shadows. Voices echoed, angry, then cut off. Then nothing. Only my ragged breath, rain dripping from branches. It was like the night had eaten them whole. The police. By the time I stumbled back, red and blue lights painted the lot. Police cruisers blocked the exit, dogs barking from their cages. I waved frantically. "She's in there!" They chased her. 3 men, black SUV. Officers fanned into the woods. The search lasted hours. Dogs barked, beams cut through branches. But in the end, they found nothing. No girl, no SUV, not even footprints. Down at the station, they took my statement. "You're sure about what you saw?" An officer asked gently. "Yes," I said, voice cracking. "She was real. She grabbed my arm. She begged me to drive." The cop exchanged a look with his partner. "We'll keep searching." But their eyes said they didn't believe me. The aftermath weeks passed. I couldn't let it go. Every time I drove south, I pulled into exit 143, buying coffee just to sit in the lot. One night, the clerk recognized me. "You still thinking about that girl?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "You saw her too, right? You called the cops." His frown deepened. "I called, yeah. But, Alex, the cameras showed you alone. No girl, no SUV, just you, running into the woods." The words hit like a blow. "That's impossible," I whispered. He shook his head. "I saw the footage myself." The whisper. For weeks, I barely slept. I told myself it was exhaustion, loneliness, imagination twisted by a failed date and a long drive. But sometimes when the road is quiet and the night too long, I swear I hear her again. A whisper from the back seat. "Please, drive." I never thought my life would bring me to nights like this. Alone under flickering lights, my breath fogging in the cool air, while diesel fumes and cigarette smoke hung heavy over a half-empty parking lot. I didn't grow up dreaming of night shifts or gas pumps. I was just a kid from Silver Creek, born the son of a carpenter and a school secretary. Most of my friends had moved on by the time I turned 27. Some joined the oil rigs, some married their high school sweethearts, and others left for college in Dallas or Houston. Me? I stumbled through a trail of odd jobs, loading docks, stocking shelves, construction sites. I had a rhythm of quitting before the work quit me. It wasn't until my mother's health took a sharp turn that I needed something steady. Her arthritis kept her from working, and the medical bills stacked up. I found myself at Creekside Gas and Mart, open 24/7, a tired little station off Highway 287. They offered me the night security slot, 10 to 6, steady hours, just enough to keep the lights on in our house and food on the table. I didn't take the job because I loved it. I took it because it was survival. The cashier. The only thing that made the job tolerable was Emily. She worked inside as the overnight cashier. I'd known her vaguely from high school. She was 2 years younger, the girl who always seemed to have headphones on and a book in her bag. I remembered once at 17, sitting 2 rows behind her on the bus during a field trip. She hummed softly to herself, and I thought it was the prettiest sound I'd ever heard. Now, years later, she stood behind bulletproof glass, scanning cigarettes and pouring burnt coffee for truckers at 2 in the morning. Life had worn on her, too. Her husband had left, and she was raising a little boy alone. We fell into easy conversation on slow nights. "You always look like you're solving some puzzle out there," she said one night, smirking as I paced past the pumps. "Maybe I am," I told her, "trying to figure out how I ended up here." She grinned. "Aren't we all?" There was comfort in those small exchanges, little reminders that even in a place as hollow as Creekside, someone saw me. The job. My routine was simple. Every half hour I made a loop around the lot, checked the pumps, the car wash, and the storage shed out back. My tools were a flashlight, a radio, and the kind of stubbornness you develop when life doesn't give you better choices. Most nights were still, too still. Crickets and semis on the highway were my only company. Sometimes I swore I heard whispers when the wind pushed through the broken fence line. Just your imagination, Emily teased once, handing me a cup of black coffee. Maybe you need more sleep. Or less, I muttered. September 19th. That night started like any other. I was leaning against the wall, chewing through a stale burrito, when Emily asked if I'd help her carry some boxes from the back. We were sorting them in the storeroom when she said, half laughing, half serious, "You ever feel like this place watches you?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the cameras?" "No," she whispered. "Like something else. I don't know. I've worked here 5 years. Some nights it feels like someone's standing just outside the window staring in." Her words settled heavier than they should have. I shrugged, trying to play it off. "Probably just truckers or drunks." She looked at me, her eyes lingering. "Or something else." The first sight. Around 1:40 a.m., I was crouched by Pump 7, snapping photos of a leaking diesel hose for the maintenance log. That's when I felt it, like someone breathing against the back of my neck. I froze. Slowly I turned. There, under the buzz of the vending machine lights, sat a man. I swear the chair had been empty 10 minutes earlier. Now he was there, perfectly still, dressed in faded coveralls and an old ranch hat. His hands were folded in his lap like he'd been waiting for me. My throat dried. "Sir?" I called out. "Do you need help?" Nothing. Not even a blink. "Station's closed inside for the night. You all right?" His head tilted, just enough to show me the shadow under his brim. My flashlight flickered in my hand. And then, gone. The chair sat empty, the air thicker, heavier. I radioed Emily, my voice unsteady. "Someone's outside by the vending machines." Her reply cut sharp through the static. "Get inside." Now I just saw something on the monitor by Pump 6. The tape. I rushed in, chest tight. Emily's face was pale. She pointed at the little black and white monitor. "There," she whispered. On the grainy screen, the man sat in the chair exactly as I'd seen him, his hat tilted, his hands folded. "See?" Relief burst in me. "I'm not—" Static flickered, and then the chair was empty. No figure walking away, no shadow moving. Just empty. Emily clapped her hand over her mouth. "What the hell?" We argued about calling the cops. Finally, she insisted. 20 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. We replayed the tape. They squinted, whispered to each other. "You saw him in person?" one asked. "Yes, right there." They searched the lot, the car wash, the shed. Nothing. Only the chair. Deep scratches clawed into the metal armrests. Fresh, jagged grooves that hadn't been there before. One deputy muttered, "Probably some drifter messing around. Slipped into the fields when you weren't looking." But I knew better. Aftermath. Weeks passed, but I couldn't shake it. Every time I walked past that chair, my chest tightened. I never lingered. Emily asked one night, "Do you think he's a ghost?" I laughed it off, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. Truckers started whispering too. A man in coveralls sitting alone, watching. Some swore they'd seen him. A few said their fathers told stories of the same figure back in the 80s, a drifter who died on this stretch of highway. I didn't want to believe it, but the scratches on that chair never faded. The last night. A year later, I quit. The job had eaten at my nerves, and I wanted more than parking lot shadows. I told Emily on my last night. "You're really leaving?" she asked softly, her eyes tired but warm. "Yeah, I can't do this forever." She nodded, then surprised me with a smile. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you deserve better." I wanted to say more, to tell her she was the reason I made it through most nights. But the words stuck. Instead, I just looked at her, memorizing the curve of her smile. When I left, I glanced one last time at the vending machines. The chair sat in its corner, silent, waiting. And even now, when I drive down 287 and past that broken neon sign, I feel the weight in my stomach. I wonder if he's still there, waiting for another guard, another soul, another witness to sit across from him and realize they're not alone. Some things you don't explain. Some things stay with you. I never thought the memory that would cling hardest to me wouldn't be the first kiss I shared with her, or the night we danced barefoot in our kitchen, or the birth of our daughter. No, the memory burned deepest in my chest is the one that terrified me enough to carve itself into my bones. It was August 14th, 2003. I was 32, married for 4 years to Lena. Back then, I worked in distribution for a furniture company, driving from one dusty warehouse to another, long weeks away from home. Lena used to complain about it. "You're married to the road," she'd say with a half smile that tried to hide real loneliness. That summer, I promised her something different, a road trip of our own, not for work, not for deadlines, just us and our 4-year-old daughter, Sophie. We rented a navy blue Ford Taurus at Denver Airport, packed it with juice boxes, cassette tapes, bags of chips, and one worn road atlas Lena insisted we use instead of just trusting road signs. The plan was simple: Colorado to California, cross deserts, find diners, make memories. Lena wanted adventure. I wanted redemption, a chance to show her I could be present. I didn't know the road would give us both more than we bargained for. The heat and the shortcut. That Thursday had been brutal. The sun over western Arizona seemed to press down like it wanted to crush the life out of everything. I had already driven 7 straight hours, stopping only once for Sophie to use a restroom in a town whose name I've long forgotten. The AC in the Taurus coughed warm air, and sweat glued my shirt to my back. By sundown, Lena had that tired, sharp edge in her voice. She sat in the passenger seat with the atlas open across her knees. "Daniel, you should have stayed on I-40, she muttered. "Highways are boring," I said, forcing lightness. "This is the scenic route." She shot me a look. "It's not scenic if we're lost." Truth was, I wasn't sure where we were anymore. The fuel gauge was dipping dangerously low, and the 2-lane road stretched out empty. No towns, no lights, just desert rolling in all directions. Sophie had fallen asleep in the back, her small hand still clutching a crayon. My throat was dry when Lena whispered, "We're almost out of gas, Dan." "I know," I said, trying to sound steady. "We'll find something." And then, like a beacon, the faint glow of neon blinked ahead, far on the horizon. The station. The closer we drove, the stranger it felt. The sign buzzed and flickered. Silver Spur Fuel and Diner. One pump, a squat diner building attached, its windows dark. The parking lot cracked and dusty. A single beat-up sedan sat abandoned near the edge. "Thank God," Lena exhaled, though her voice carried no relief. "This place looks wrong." "It's fine," I said, even though my stomach nodded. 5 minutes, in and out. I pulled up by the pump. The car's engine ticked as it cooled. The desert wrapped us in silence except for the neon's buzz. Sophie stirred but didn't wake. Lena turned to look at her, then back at me, worry written clear on her face. "Dan, hurry," she whispered. "Please." I stepped out, the heat still rising from the asphalt even at night. The pump handle was stiff, reluctant, like it hadn't been used in years. As I fueled, the old dial ticked slowly upward, each click echoing far too loud. That's when I heard it. A shuffle. Heavy, deliberate footsteps behind the diner. The stranger. I froze, staring toward the shadows. At first, nothing. Then he appeared. A thin, wiry man, hood pulled low, clothes filthy. He carried a shotgun, and it was already pointed at my chest. Lena screamed inside the car. My heart slammed against my ribs. My hands went up instinctively. "Wallet, keys, now," he barked. His voice cracked with something between rage and desperation. "Take whatever you want," I stammered. "Just don't. My daughter's in the car, please." He stepped closer, and the shotgun gleamed in the neon light. His face was mostly shadow, but I caught his eyes. Flat, hollow, like he wasn't entirely there. And then another voice cut through the night. "Put the weapon down." From the diner's shadow, a man in a sheriff's uniform strode forward, gun drawn. His voice was sharp, commanding. "Drop it, now." The air froze. The hooded man's eyes darted between me and the sheriff. His finger twitched on the trigger. Then, in a way that still makes my skin crawl, he lowered the gun. Not out of fear, almost like he was bored. He turned and walked into the desert, vanishing into the darkness as though the night swallowed him whole. The sheriff didn't move until the man was gone. Then he turned to me. "You folks all right?" Lena had climbed out, clutching Sophie to her chest. She was trembling. So was I. "Who was that?" I asked. The sheriff's gaze lingered on the desert. "Someone who's been causing trouble out here." Then he looked at me, weary, almost sorrowful. "You shouldn't be on these roads at night. Get your family back to the interstate. Don't stop." "But go," he said firmly. "Now." Doubt we fueled the rest in silence. I drove back toward the road, hands slippery on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, the sheriff stood still in the lot, gun low at his side, staring into the desert like he expected the man to return. We didn't speak for miles. The tires hummed. Sophie slept again. Lena's hand clutched mine so tightly it hurt. Finally, she whispered, "Dan, what if that sheriff wasn't real?" I glanced at her. "What are you talking about? What if we imagined him?" I almost laughed, but it came out strangled. He had looked real. His badge gleamed. His boots crunched gravel. But her words planted a doubt that gnawed at me. An hour later, we reached a bright, crowded truck stop. Everything felt normal again. Coffee brewing, country music on the speakers, truckers joking by the counter. I asked around about Silver Spur Fuel. One trucker frowned. "That place? Been shut down since the late 70s. Burned out. Ain't nothing left but ruins." Lena's fingers dug into my palm. I couldn't breathe. Aftermath. We never drove that road again. We never even spoke of it much, except in hushed fragments late at night. Sophie grew up, married, has her own kids now. To her, the road trip was just a blur of deserts and diners. She doesn't remember the neon glow or the shotgun or the sheriff who may or may not have been real. But Lena does. Sometimes when the house is quiet, she'll touch my arm and whisper, "He saved us. Whoever or whatever he was, he saved us." And I'll nod, even though the question haunts me still. Was he real? A ghost in uniform, tied to that cursed station? Or just my mind conjuring a protector in the moment of greatest fear? All I know is the terror that night was real. So was the relief. And so is the way Lena's hand found mine, steadying me, reminding me love was the only thing that made me keep breathing. To this day, when I see a lonely neon sign in the desert, I grip the wheel harder and keep driving. Because some roads don't just lead you somewhere, they keep a piece of you forever. I never thought a quiet Friday night could change the way I viewed the world. Growing up, I'd always been practical, the kind of kid who kept a mental checklist of everything that could go wrong and planned accordingly. My name is Ethan Hall, and back then, I was 21, halfway through college, working nights at Riverside Gas and Mart, a tiny 24-hour station on the outskirts of Havenwood, a town so small it felt like the trees outnumbered the people. Before that night, my life had been a series of routines: classes, work, a handful of friends who were more acquaintances, and Lila, my girlfriend of 6 months. Lila was the kind of person who brought warmth wherever she went. We met during a college literature seminar, both of us shyly arguing about who would win in a Hemingway versus Fitzgerald debate. She had this laugh that made my chest tighten and my stomach flutter all at once. I liked her more than I'd admitted, even to myself. My parents were supportive but stretched thin. Dad managed a small auto repair shop. Mom worked long hours at a pharmacy. Money was tight, and my part-time job at Riverside Gas helped cover textbooks and rent. I didn't mind the late shifts. It was predictable, and I liked the quiet hum of fluorescent lights at night. That December, Havenwood had been hit by an early snowstorm, the kind that made the trees sag under weight and left the roads slick and dangerous. I was finishing my shift at the station, reorganizing the shelves and sweeping the entryway, when Lila called. "Hey, you!" Her voice crackled over the line. "I know it's late, but I was hoping you could drop by." Mom made chili. I smiled, imagining the steam curling from her bowl. "I can be there in 20. Snow's fine. I'm used to it." "Don't get reckless," she teased. "Promise?" "Promise," I said. Hanging up, I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The wind hit me like a wall, snow blinding in the streetlights. I started the old Ford Focus I'd been driving for years, its heater struggling but manageable. The first few miles were normal, the kind of drive I'd made countless times, windows fogged, radio playing soft indie tracks. But about 15 minutes from the station, I noticed the fuel gauge dipping faster than usual. Great, I muttered. Of course. I scanned the road and spotted a small lone gas station at the edge of a deserted stretch, Maplewood Gas and Deli. Its lights buzzed weakly, flickering against the falling snow. I pulled in, heart already sensing unease. Something about the isolation hit me. The lot was empty except for a single car near the convenience store, which was dimly lit, cashier absent behind the counter. My tires crunched over snow as I parked and got out. Just fuel and a soda, I muttered, heading for the pump. The cold gnawed at my hands as I twisted the nozzle into the tank. That's when I heard it, the faint scrape of boots against snow. I froze. "Hello," I called, hoping it was a passerby. Nothing. Just the wind, I thought. But the sound came again, deliberate, coming from behind the building. My pulse spiked. I turned slowly. A figure emerged from the shadows. A man in a bulky coat, hood pulled low. His pace wasn't fast, but he was too steady, too precise. My gut screamed to run, but my brain whispered, "Don't overreact. Maybe it's nothing." "Hey!" I shouted, trying to keep my voice calm. He stopped, tilting his head, silent. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I dropped it once. The man approached, and something about his movement made my chest tighten. His fists were clenched at his sides, shadowed beneath the hood. "Don't move," I whispered to myself. Before he could strike, the store door banged open, and a voice rang out, "Get away from him!" The cashier, a middle-aged man named Sam, came running, a baseball bat in his hands. The figure hesitated. For a tense second, all three of us froze in the swirling snow. Then, without a word, he bolted into the trees bordering the lot. Snow kicked up behind him as he disappeared. I collapsed into the driver's seat, trembling, dialing 911 with numb fingers. The dispatcher's voice was calm, asking questions I barely answered. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they swept the area with flashlights. Nothing. No tracks beyond 30 yards into the woods. "What was he after?" I asked the officer, voice cracking. "Hard to say," he replied. "Might have been a drifter. Could have just been looking to scare someone. But you did the right thing, staying in the car." I nodded, unable to shake the chill. Then I noticed something strange. The last delivery slip I had in my pocket wasn't for anyone real. The address was empty land, a burner phone used to place the order. "You were set up," the officer said softly. And that's when reality hit me. Someone had planned this, calculated it. Lila's warm smile flashed in my mind, the chili waiting at her apartment. The thought of her being nearby while I nearly walked into danger made my chest tighten. I didn't go back that night, or the next. For weeks, I avoided night shifts when possible. When I did work, I carried a small pocket knife just in case. Friends shrugged it off. "Probably some drunk messing with you," one said. But I couldn't. The meticulous way he had watched me, the abrupt stop of his footprints, it was deliberate. Lila, of course, worried. "You can't live like this," she said one night, holding my hands. "But I get it. You've changed, and I'll wait. We'll figure it out." I learned something important that night. Life is fragile. Trust in routine can be dangerous. Safety is not a guarantee, and sometimes it's the ordinary quiet places where terror waits. The gas station, the snowed-in road, the empty lot. Courage matters, but caution saves lives. I eventually graduated, moved out of Havenwood, but winter storms still unsettle me. Quiet gas stations make me uneasy. My tank is always full, doors locked, engine running, and sometimes in the corner of my eye, I swear I see him again, watching, waiting. But I also carry Lila's warmth, the memory of human connection amidst fear. And that balance, between caution and trust, fear and love, is what keeps me moving forward. I never thought a summer road trip could feel like the last mistake of your life, but that August of 2019 proved me wrong. My name's Liam Carter, and I was 26, recently graduated, and working a dead-end internship at a marketing firm in Denver. I'd never been much of a traveler, and the thought of long drives made me anxious. But I also wanted to escape the monotony of my tiny studio apartment and my endless spreadsheet reports. Cassie, my girlfriend of 2 years, had convinced me. She had this way of making adventure sound like oxygen, effortless, essential, unavoidable. She was a graduate student studying environmental science at the University of Colorado. Unlike me, she thrived on spontaneity. "Come on, Liam," she said one Thursday night while we sat on the roof of my apartment building, the city lights flickering beneath us. She had her laptop closed, a backpack at her feet. "You need this. We're always talking about doing something real before it's too late. Let's drive to the coast. No plan, just us and the road." I hesitated. "It's what? 1,000 miles? Two? We barely have time off work." She laughed, tossing her hair back. "That's the point. It's now or never. We don't have to have a plan. That's boring. Life's boring." I smiled reluctantly. Her energy was contagious, impossible to resist. I said yes, mostly because I wanted to see her grin like that in the morning sunlight. The first day was idyllic. The Rockies rolled past like living paintings, the highway stretched endlessly, and Cassie sang along to playlists that made me feel alive in a way my office never did. We stopped at small diners, took pictures of abandoned barns, and laughed at every minor mishap. I thought, this is what freedom feels like. But the second night, somewhere in the back roads of Nebraska, the illusion started to crumble. Our cheap rental car rattled down State Highway 34, the moon barely piercing the horizon. My shoulders ached from hours behind the wheel. Cassie, normally an endless fountain of chatter, was unusually quiet, staring out the window with a frown I didn't recognize. "Are you okay?" I asked, glancing at her. "Yeah, just tired," she said softly, but her eyes stayed fixed on the black horizon. We drove in silence until the fuel light blinked ominously. We were somewhere between Hastings and Kearney, an expanse of cornfields swallowed by night. My heart sank. "There's maybe a gas station in a few miles," I muttered, hoping it was true. Cassie leaned forward, her forehead resting near mine. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish I was," I admitted. And then, in the distance, a faint green glow shimmered. A lone gas station, a single pump illuminated beneath a flickering sign that read, "Willow Creek Fuel and Diner." Only one other car was parked near the edge of the lot, a dark SUV idling with its engine quiet. Lights off, like it had melted into the night. Cassie's hand found mine. "Something about this doesn't feel right," she whispered. I forced a laugh. "It's just a gas station. Don't worry." But the unease coiled tight in my chest as we pulled into the lot. The air was thick and humid. Crickets chirped in the surrounding cornfields, punctuating the silence. I stepped out, swiping my card at the pump, while Cassie leaned against the car, her eyes darting toward the dark SUV. "Maybe he's waiting for someone," I said, trying to sound casual, though my stomach tightened. Cassie didn't respond. She just kept watching. Inside the small store, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A middle-aged woman with streaks of gray in her hair glanced at us from behind the counter, eyes tired but sharp. "You kids be careful tonight," she said abruptly, her voice low, serious. "Strange people wandering around these parts." I frowned. "Strange people?" "Yeah," she muttered, glancing at the window behind us. "You'll know if he's out there." I felt a chill run down my spine. Cassie gripped my arm. "Let's just get what we need," she said quietly. We grabbed bottled water and a bag of snacks. On the way out, the SUV was still there, angled toward us. My pulse thumped painfully. "Let's go," I muttered. We pulled back onto the highway. For a few miles, nothing happened. Then Cassie leaned forward, her voice trembling. "He's behind us." I checked the rearview mirror. 2 headlights glowed steadily in the darkness, keeping pace. Not too close, not too far. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "It's nothing. He'll pass us soon," I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. But he didn't. He stayed behind, a silent shadow that mirrored every turn we took. "Take the next exit," Cassie urged. Her voice cracked. "Just get off the highway." I swerved toward a small sign for Kearney, heart hammering, tires squealing. The SUV followed. My stomach knotted. The city lights that should have been comforting only amplified the terror. We drove past shuttered shops, empty streets until we spotted a roadside motel. Its vacancy sign flickered weakly, a single beacon in the dark. "Park by the office," Cassie whispered urgently, "where people can see us." I obeyed, slamming the car into a stop. We bolted inside, bags in tow. The man in the SUV didn't pursue us. He stayed near the entrance for a tense moment, engine idling. Then a low voice called from the window, "You staying here?" The calmness in his tone made me shiver. The clerk barked back, "Move along, or I call the cops." The SUV finally rolled away, disappearing into the night. We spent the rest of the night in the lobby, clinging to each other, refusing to sleep. Cassie rested her head on my shoulder. I thought it would just be a road trip," she murmured. "I know," I whispered back. "Me too." Morning light did little to soothe the lingering fear. The SUV was gone, but every passing car on the highway afterward made our hands tighten on the wheel. Every night stop felt charged with the memory of those unblinking headlights. Years later, we still bring it up, laughing nervously. But that night changed us. I no longer brush off unease. I trust instinct, respect warning signs, and hold Cassie a little tighter when we're on the road. The world isn't always safe, and danger can follow silently. Sometimes it's the quiet that carries the most threat. And sometimes love is the only thing that keeps you steady when fear is close enough to touch.